It was one of old Hollywood's most glamorous marriages, Robert Taylor and Barbara Stanwyck, the picture-perfect couple on and off the silver screen. But behind the lights, the red carpets, and the headlines, there was turmoil, tension, and secrets no fan could have imagined. Before we dive in, let us know below. Do you think Robert Taylor was hiding something all along? Type 1 for yes or 0 for no in the comments. Because today, we uncover the shocking truth that only Robert Taylor could confess, and it may change the way you see their love story forever. A picture-perfect marriage cracks. The summer of 1939, when Hollywood was at the height of its golden era, was when they first met. Under the glare of Studio 8, Barbara Stanwyck shone with self-assurance, remarkable beauty, and self-made success. Within the same room, Robert Taylor walked in with a fitted charm and a skyward stare. He appeared to be a young star who was infatuated and a bit confused. It was a frenzy of press releases, gorgeous images, and public admiration that their relationship became a headline once it became public knowledge. Robert Taylor, a prominent guy in Hollywood, wed Barbara Stanwyck, an accomplished actress, on May 14, 1939, following a relationship that lasted for 3 years. Fans and members of the press alike paid attention to the ceremony, which took place in San Diego, California, and was a significant event in the world of entertainment. When they were married, it was widely believed that they were bringing together two of the most well-known and skilled actors of the golden age of Hollywood. During the time when Stanwyck and Taylor were getting married, she had already established a substantial career in both the cinema and radio industries. She was a seasoned actress who was recognized for her forceful performances and her independent personality. The work that Taylor did in romantic dramas and action pictures garnered him the same amount of admiration and recognition from the general public. Taylor was a matinee idol with a pleasant screen presence. Despite its small size, the wedding was a magnificent and personal event. A woman named Marion Marks, who is married to the comic Zippo Marks and acted as Stanwyck's matron of honor, was one of the people who attended the event. Not only was Marion a friend, but she was also a member of the close-knit group of celebrities who comprised the foremost members of Hollywood's elite at the time. Buck Mack, a former vaudeville performer who had a strong parental bond with Stanwyck, served as Taylor's best man. Stanwyck called Mack his father. Since the actress had a terrible childhood, Mack had been acting as a sort of surrogate father to her. Mack was married to Millie, who was Stanwyck's elder sister. Mack served as Stanwyck's personal assistant in addition to his role as a father figure. In this capacity, he was responsible for handling Stanwyck's affairs and assisting her in protecting her privacy in the eyes of the public. Despite its lack of sound, the wedding day was powerful. No trumpets, no flashbulbs, just Barbara in a sleek gown and Robert dressed in colors reminiscent of flying suits, all set to go down the aisle. When Robert heard the sound of her footsteps echoing down the hallway, he remained still. The ring weighed heavy on his hand, despite the fact that he was young, gorgeous, and flirtatious. And even though they said, "I do," it was a pledge made under the lights of Hollywood, not with hearts that were completely aligned. They had a marriage that seemed more like two individuals meeting on different paths when they were not together in public. Barbara was adamant about adhering to scripts, interviews, and procedures. Robert, on the other hand, longed for the freedom and open skies of the sky. After another year had passed, he made his first purchase, which was a sleek monoplane that was brimming with opportunities. Never before had they departed from it together. Barbara, who was alone herself, waved from the hangar. Behind the scenes, their romance was more of a studio arrangement than a passionate love story. Divorce. Though their marriage was seen as strong for a number of years, the couple eventually began to drift apart due to personal and differences, as well as the strain that Hollywood stardom often placed on relationships. Robert's obsession with flying became his refuge and their wedge. He spent more nights over airfields than at home. The roar of engines became louder than their dwindling conversations. One evening, just home after a flight, he placed his hands on Barbara's shoulders and whispered, "I think I have to chase something out there." Later, he admitted it to himself. "When I got my own plane, I should have realized that I was needing her less." That admission, as clear as a contrail in his mind, turned the sky into a border between them. Hey, before we uncover Robert Taylor's private confession, Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss more shocking old Hollywood revelations. The shadows of affairs. Amid the hum of propellers, Barbara noticed Robert leaving early for shoots or arriving late. Rumors reached her ears. An affair with Lana Turner during a 1941 shoot, then later whispers of an Italian actress on Quo Vadis. Distrust settled between them like dust. One afternoon, after days of tension, Robert handed her the keys. His voice shook. "I can't pretend anymore." Barbara met his eyes always too far away. She held the keys, offered his bag, her own voice calm. "If you don't want me here, the door's right there." Her dignity echoed louder than any argument. After nearly 12 years of marriage, Barbara Stanwyck filed for divorce, and the couple officially separated in February 1951. Their divorce was efficient, devoid of scandal or anger. She took 15% of his income, not for vengeance, but self-reliance. He accepted it with odd relief. In later years, he told friends, "I just say, there's the door." And she let me go. A marriage that was considered to be among the most prominent in Hollywood came to an end when the couple decided to break their union. During the period that they were together, Stanwyck shared a home with her adopted son, Anthony Tony Dion. She had adopted Anthony Tony Dion during her previous marriage to the comedian and actor Frank Fay. A significant portion of the couple's marriage was spent with Tony living with them, and he was considered to be a member of their blended family. Despite this, Stanwyck continued to have full custody of Tony following the divorce, and the boy's relationship with Taylor became increasingly distant as a result. Tony had been a father figure to Taylor during those formative years, despite the fact that Taylor had not given Tony a legal adoption. After going through a divorce, Taylor ultimately settled down with someone else. Ursula Thiess, a stunning and skilled German actress who had achieved notice in European cinema before making the crossover to Hollywood, was the person he met in the year 1952. The two rapidly formed a deep connection with one another, and their relationship flourished in spite of Taylor's reluctance to remarry, which had been mentioned in the past from time to time. Jackson Hole, Wyoming served as the location for their little wedding ceremony, which took place on May 23, 1954. The couple wanted a private, personal wedding that was away from the glare of the media, and the site, which was hidden in the rough majesty of the Rocky Mountains, mirrored both their love of the outdoors and their desire for a relaxed atmosphere. Ursula Thiess and Robert Taylor eventually started a family together after they were married. In 1955, they became parents for the first time to a son whom they called Terrence. 2 years later, in 1959, they received a girl whom they named Tessa. It was well known that Taylor was a passionate and attentive father to his children, and he played an active role in the upbringing of his children. Not only did Taylor become a stepfather to their 2 biological children, but he also became a stepfather to Manuela and Michael Thiess, who were Ursula's children from a previous marriage. He took his duty as a stepfather very seriously, and for a length of time, the family gave the impression of being stable and close-knit. Nonetheless, a terrible event would occur at a later time in the Taylor home. Robert Taylor's tragic end. On May 26, 1969, Ursula Thiess found the body of her son, Michael Thiess, in a motel room in West Los Angeles. This discovery occurred just a few months before Robert Taylor passed away from lung cancer. Overdosing on drugs was the cause of his death, which was a devastating conclusion to a young life that had been defined by emotional problems and upheaval. The fact that Michael had only been discharged from a mental hospital 1 month prior to his passing brought up a number of distressing issues regarding his mental health and the appropriateness of the treatment he had received. In 1964, his life took a particularly dark turn when he was sent to a reformatory for attempting to poison his biological father by sneaking pesticide into his meals. This is the year when his life took a particularly dark turn. A shade was thrown over the years that followed as a result of this very unpleasant occurrence, which stunned the family and caused ties to become strained. Particularly in light of the fact that Robert Taylor's own health was fast deteriorating, Ursula and the rest of the family were burdened by the difficulties that Michael was experiencing and the pain that they caused. Taylor fought the disease with stoicism, continuing to work whenever it was feasible despite having treatment for lung cancer. He was diagnosed with lung cancer in the late 1960s, and his years of heavy smoking were a contributing factor behind his diagnosis. As he struggled to come to terms with the death of his stepson and the realization that his time with his loved ones was drawing to a close, His final months were defined by both a decrease in his physical health and an overwhelming sense of mental sorrow. Confession secrets behind his marriage to Barbara Stanwyck. Hollywood hunk Robert Taylor, who was once regarded as the pinnacle of on-screen manhood, finally opened up about the turbulent and highly personal reasons behind the termination of his marriage to movie great Barbara Stanwyck. This revelation came in the twilight of his life and career. Over the course of several years, their marriage had enthralled both the general public and the media, and it was acclaimed as one of the most gorgeous and mysterious couples in Hollywood. However, behind the sparkling red carpet appearances and poised photo ops was a marriage that was riddled with emotional distance, temperaments that were incompatible with one another, and silent sacrifices. These were things that Taylor had withheld for a long time, burying them behind layers of stoic caution. During open chats with intimate friends and later biographers, Taylor stated that his partnership with Stanwyck was not even close to the romantic ideal that was promoted by their studio's advertising machine. At a period when both his professional and personal identities were still in the process of developing, he was forced into marriage by MGM officials, notably studio chief Louis B. Mayer. He remarked about the enormous impact that these executives had on him. Because Taylor was 4 years younger than Stanwyck and was still trying to establish his foothold in Hollywood, he frequently had feelings of being overpowered by her tremendous presence, both on-screen and off-screen. She was a determined actor who exuded a dominating presence. She was someone who had fought her way up from a difficult and disadvantaged historical background. He said that over time, he had also been reduced by her power, despite the fact that he appreciated her strength. Taylor asserts that the couple's marriage was plagued by a basic emotional mismatch between the two of them. Because she had been abandoned and struggled through her early years, Stanwyck developed a survival strategy that resulted in her being highly independent and frequently emotionally guarded. The opposite was true for Taylor, who yearned for a sense of domestic closeness, warmth, and tenderness, all of which he found to be more difficult to come by. In his description of their house, he referred to it as a serene museum of things that were left unsaid, replete with refined quietness and an enduring feeling of unfulfilled anticipation. With Stanwyck devoting herself to her work with an almost military-like level of discipline, and Taylor withdrawing into outdoor activities and mail company, often embarking on extended hunting expeditions or escaping to their ranch where seclusion gave comfort from the pressure of their marriage, the pair frequently wandered into different worlds. A further revelation made by Taylor was the burden of living under the continual gaze of the public. Because of his status as a matinee idol, it was required of him to have a clean image. The couple's appearances were meticulously planned by publicity specialists from the studio, who even scripted their own remarks to be published in fan publications. Behind a front of perfection, whatever personal strain that could have been present had to be repressed. When Taylor was in a rare moment of emotion, she once stated that the union between two individuals was more than simply a marriage. It was a dedication to the general public, a performance that we were obligated to deliver each and every day. The fact that they had different goals and aspirations for their family life was yet another sad realization. Stanwyck, who was tormented by her own horrific background and frightened of parenthood, declined to have children, despite the fact that Taylor apparently yearned for children. Despite the fact that Taylor never publicly questioned her choice, he subsequently revealed to close friends and family members that it left a significant gap behind in their marriage. In his reflection, he realized that the absence of children had resulted in less links between them, which would enable them to overcome the rising gap between them. There were persistent suspicions, which were never proven but constantly lurked, about Taylor's probable indiscretions and doubts about his sexual orientation. These speculations, together with the murmurs that plagued many stars during the golden era of Hollywood, added to the emotional complexity of the situation. Taylor, who had spent his early years under contract and under supervision, frequently discovered that the moral demands of his day and the controlling structure of the studio system limited the private choices he could make. Conversations about his connection with a few male coworkers caused eyebrows to be raised in the business world, but such topics were never brought up in public. As for Stanwyck, she, too, was subject to her fair share of gossip. There is a possibility that the burden of living with hidden realities contributed to the widening emotional gap that existed between them. The confession that Taylor made about his hesitation to terminate the marriage on his own and his dread of confrontation was maybe the most deeply moving of all of his statements. He confessed that he had intended to leave years before the divorce, but he was unable to do so because of feelings of guilt. the expectation of the public, and a strong desire to believe that things might be resolved in some way. In the end, Stanwyck was the one who initiated the divorce process, citing irreconcilable differences as the reason. This was a neat legal word that did not even begin to touch the surface of the emotional history that existed between them. Taylor always spoke of Stanwyck with a mixture of veneration and sadness, despite the anguish that she was already experiencing. In later interviews, he referred to her as the most significant lady I had ever known, and the one who had been the most influential in my education. Stanwyck, on the other hand, never remarried and frequently refrained from speaking about Taylor, despite the fact that her acquaintances asserted that she continued to exhibit a deep devotion to his memory. Taylor asserted that he and Stanwyck continued to have a basic respect for one another, despite the fact that they were going through significant personal challenges. In spite of the fact that they had divorced in 1951, they continued to speak positively of one another in public speeches. At the time when Taylor was critically sick with lung cancer in the late 1960s, Stanwyck never remarried, and it is said that she visited him in the hospital in a quiet and unobtrusive manner, out of a loyalty that had not completely waned. At the end of the day, Taylor's confession was not an attempt to smear Stanwyck's reputation or to alter history. Rather, it was an act of belated honesty. According to him, we were two individuals who were attempting to make something work in a world that was impossible. What had been seen for a long time as a storybook romance that had been undone was given a degree of humanity that was bittersweet by his remarks. It served as a reminder that nobody is immune to feelings of isolation, mismatched hearts, and the invisible wounds that cannot be healed by time alone. Even the brightest stars are not immune to these struggles. Keep watching to find out how their childhood past haunted and affected their marriage. The silent echo of his father. Robert Taylor's family, especially his upbringing under a strict, emotionally reserved father, had a profound impact on his later relationships, including his famously complex marriage to Barbara Stanwyck. Robert's father, Dr. Spangler, Andrew Brugge, was a man of few words and firm principles. He believed in hard work, restraint, and keeping emotions in check, values he tried to instill in his son from an early age. Love in the Brugge household wasn't expressed through hugs or open affection, but through discipline, expectations, and stoic presence. This upbringing created a man who could be deeply loyal, but who also struggled with vulnerability. Taylor, while charming and dependable in public, often kept his emotions tightly bottled up. Those close to him said he could be warm and funny, but also distant when it mattered most. When he married Barbara Stanwyck in 1939, this emotional wall would prove both a shield and a wedge. She needed emotion. He gave routine. Stanwyck, by contrast, came from an emotionally turbulent childhood, an orphan raised in foster homes. She craved security and affection, but also had her own walls. She needed someone who could meet her emotionally, and though Robert loved her in his way, he had been conditioned to express love quietly, through duty, not words. Bob was kind, generous, but he kept a part of himself always locked away. One MGM colleague once said, that was something he learned from his father. Over time, the emotional distance became a chasm. Taylor focused on work, sometimes retreating into long hunting or fishing trips, ways to find silence, much like his father had. The studio's pressure and a father's shadow. Adding to the tension was the intense pressure from MGM. Louis B. Mayer had orchestrated the marriage for publicity, pairing two of the studio's brightest stars. Taylor, raised to respect authority and avoid conflict, rarely challenged the studio's demands, even when it interfered with his personal life. Some say Stanwyck felt second to MGM, and by extension, to the legacy of the reserved father figure Robert never truly left behind. When the couple divorced in 1951, they did so quietly, with dignity, no mudslinging, no public breakdown. That, too, was very much in line with Taylor's upbringing. Keep your pain private. He remained respectful of Barbara in interviews, and she, in return, kept her heartache out of the press. In later years, friends say Taylor privately expressed regret, not necessarily over the divorce, but over his inability to express himself more freely. The emotional restraint taught in childhood, once a form of survival, had also become a barrier to deeper connection. Although he failed in personal life, he left a legacy that everyone must envy. Path to success. Robert was the only son of Ruth Adeline and Spangler Andrew Brugge. His father, a strict Presbyterian and a doctor by trade, was known for his discipline and intellectual curiosity. The family moved frequently during Robert's early years due to his father's work. His mother, by contrast, was gentle and nurturing, encouraging Robert's early interest in the arts. Despite living on the plains of Nebraska, far from any Hollywood spotlight, Robert showed promise in music early on. He learned to play the cello, and by his teens, he dreamed not of film sets, but of orchestras. In interviews later in life, Taylor remembered his mother sneaking him into traveling vaudeville shows when his father wasn't watching, planting a seed of love for performance that would bloom later. Loneliness and independence. Taylor was shy as a boy. He struggled to fit in at school, often described as quiet and watchful, the loneliness of being an only child, and the sometimes overbearing expectations of his father gave him a stoic emotional strength, but also left a deep desire to find validation outside the home. "I learned early that if I didn't take care of myself, nobody would do it for me," he once said. When he enrolled at Doane College in Crete, Nebraska, he first planned to become a doctor like his father, but it wasn't long before music called again. He transferred to Pomona College in California to study music seriously, and that fateful decision brought him one step closer to the film studios nearby. It was during his time at Pomona, performing in school theater productions and local orchestras, that a talent scout spotted him. He had the face, the voice, and that quiet inner fire. Breakthrough role. Soon after, in 1934, he was given the stage name Robert Taylor by MGM Studios, where he was given the opportunity to showcase his charm on stage and his cinematic attributes. Taylor rose to the top of the entertainment industry very rapidly because of the tremendous resources and promotional power that MGM provided for him. After only a few short years, he was already starring beside some of the most famous actors in the industry, including Greta Garbo, Norma Shearer, and more recently, Barbara Stanwyck. However, the recollection of his Nebraska beginnings lived on in him forever. During an interview with the magazine Photoplay, he stated, "I am still the same individual who used to fix fences with my father. Hollywood will not be able to take that away from you. Fortunately, I didn't give in to it." Magnificent Obsession, which he starred in with Irene Dunne, and in which he displayed his sexual charm and emotional depth, was the film that provided him with his breakthrough role. After that, Taylor became a mainstay in Hollywood's most celebrated films, starring in a wide variety of genres, ranging from sweeping romantic dramas like Camille, 1936, with Greta Garbo, to war films like Baton, 1943, and Waterloo Bridge, 1940, where he played characters with stoic dignity and inner strength. He was a mainstay in Hollywood's most celebrated films, the epic biblical drama Quo Vadis, which was released in 1951, featured him in the part of Marcus Vinicius, a Roman general who was caught between duty and conscience. This portrayal is considered to be one of his most famous performances. Taylor's contributions to the war effort during World War II included not only his movie appearances in patriotic war pictures, but also his enlistment in the United States Naval Air Corps, where he served as a flying instructor and narrator of training films. It was at this time that Taylor made his contribution to the war cause. A more mature and world-weary perspective was reflected in his post-war films, which further endeared him to the American audience. His feeling of patriotism and duty continued to endear him to the American people. Taylor was able to effectively shift into darker and more morally complicated characters during the post-war era. This can be seen in films such as Undercurrent, 1946, High Wall, 1947, and The Bribe, 1949. These films demonstrate that Taylor was prepared to question his own image and accept the changing tone of American cinema. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, Taylor's acting developed into a more mature form, and he transitioned from portraying sensitive young men to more complicated and resolute individual roles. It was during the later years of his career that he also established himself as a recognized producer and began his foray into the world of television. He is most known for his role as the presenter and sometimes star of the crime thriller The Detectives, which starred Robert Taylor from 1959 to 1962. The fact that he was able to make a smooth transition between cinema and television helped him establish himself as a multifaceted and enduring figure in the entertainment business. Death. An important medical treatment was performed on the renowned American actor Robert Taylor in October of 1968. Taylor was highly recognized for his stunning appearance and dominating presence on film. The procedure involved the removal of a part of his right lung. In the beginning, this procedure was triggered by a medical diagnostic that suggested Taylor could have caught coccidioidomycosis, which is a deadly fungal infection that is more generally known as valley fever. The symptoms of the disease, which is common in dry locations such as the Central Valley of California, might be similar to those of pneumonia. In addition, the condition is frequently caught by the inhalation of airborne fungus spores. It was concerning to the medical professionals because Taylor displayed symptoms that were consistent with the illness. These symptoms included a chronic cough, chest discomfort, and exhaustion. On the other hand, given his extensive history of heavy smoking, there was also an underlying fear about the prospect that a more serious disease was hiding in the shadows in the absence of detection. A distressing finding was discovered by the medical professionals as they were performing the procedure, which was supposed to serve both as a preventative and diagnostic measure. Instead of suffering from valley fever, Taylor was actually suffering from lung cancer in its advanced stage. The news of the diagnosis was a heartbreaking blow not only to Taylor himself, but also to his family, friends, and the innumerable followers he has all over the world. Throughout the decades, Taylor had maintained a rugged and muscular cinematic character. He had starred in films such as Cameo, Waterloo Bridge, and Quo Vadis, frequently portraying warriors, lovers, and explorers with a quiet strength and stoic masculinity. Off-screen, however, his health had been deteriorating at an alarming rate, most likely as a consequence of his long-term addiction to cigarettes. Taylor said that he had started smoking to a significant degree while he was a teenager and that he had kept the habit for the duration of his life, frequently taking as much as 3 packs of cigarettes every day. Over the course of several decades, he was exposed to tobacco smoke, which dramatically increased his chance of developing respiratory ailments and ultimately had a role in the development of the aggressive cancer that finally led to his death. Not long before she was scheduled to have surgery, Taylor took the tough but firm choice to give up smoking, despite the fact that the diagnosis was not good. This was a major personal sacrifice for someone who had been a smoker for their whole life, and it indicated his determination to combat the condition. Despite this, the disease had already advanced beyond a stage that could be treated, and his condition rapidly deteriorated. As Taylor's immune system became more damaged over the course of the final months of his life, he was admitted to the hospital a total of 7 times. In addition to the effects of chemotherapy and other treatments that left him weak and weary, he suffered from recurrent and devastating infections, such as pneumonia and bronchitis. These infections were aggravated by the fact that he was receiving chemotherapy. Throughout the ordeal, he was remembered by his friends and colleagues as retaining his dignity and accepting his fate with a calm fortitude that resembled the roles he had so frequently depicted in cinema. St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica, California was the location where Robert Taylor died on June 8, 1969. He was 57 years old at the time of his death. Many people who had grown up admiring him during the golden age of Hollywood were saddened by his passing since it signaled the end of an era. After the news of his passing traveled around the country, the hospital, which was a well-known establishment that had treated a large number of celebrities over the course of his career, became the location of sorrow for both his followers and his personal friends. What do you think really happened between Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor? Comment below, was it love, duty, or something else entirely? If you love vintage Hollywood secrets, give this video a like. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that reveal the truth behind the stars.